New South Wales Government will encourage motorists to pay an extra amount for their car registration to offset their emissions. The scheme would work similar to Qantas flights, which allow passengers to offset the emissions of their trip when paying the airfare. The initiative will be optional. The money paid by motorists would be used to purchase carbon credit units, equivalent to up to 1 year's vehicle emissions.
So for as little as $80, you can offset your carbon footprint here in New South Wales. It's the first scheme of its kind anywhere in the country, and we're really excited about it. We know that vehicle emissions cause about 22% of the state's total emissions, and 50% of that comes from private vehicles. So this is an opportunity for people to do their bit for the environment.
Joining me for more on this is Shadow State Energy Minister Jihad. Thanks very much for your time. I guess just your reaction to the government's idea here.
Pleasure. How are you going, Tom? It's certainly a very interesting kind of a, announcement, isn't it? It's not what I was expecting to hear when I woke up this morning. It's not the sort of announcement that you'd expect would get that much attention. I think there's a little bit of trying to do the right thing, but effectively what the minister here seems to be not thinking about is the fact that we're actually in a cost of living crisis. People are really struggling, and then you're sort of saying, hey, look, if you want to make more of a contribution, this is what you can do. I think there's other things that people are really thinking about at the moment, namely trying to be able to get through day to day as a result of very high energy prices, as a result of the tolls, as a result of the cost of living pressures that they're facing.
Right, but this is optional, of course, so if people can afford it, they want to, it's an easy way to contribute and know that their car will be offset effectively. So given that, it didn't sound like the strongest criticism you just had. Are you open to adopting this idea if you win government, or are you rejecting it?
We're not. No, look, I mean, obviously I've just heard this announcement just a little while ago, but being optional, I mean, we have a look at what's happening with the Qantas, for example, where I think there's a 10% uptake. People end up making their choices, but I think, if people want to do it, well, then good luck to them. But there's lots of other ways too that people can make a contribution in terms of offsetting carbon, or in terms of, making donations to climate funds. There's lots of different ways. I think that should be an individual choice, and what governments really need to focus on is being able to help families. And if we want to talk about electric vehicles and so forth, maybe there's more that can be done that way. But I think primarily what we want to see is people making their own choices. So yeah, look, it's their choice. It's certainly not something that we'd been, it's not something that I've been considering, because as I said, the focus for me is trying to make sure that at the moment, as Chris Minns is talking about, the cost of living pressures.
Right. But if it's rolled out before the election, you'd keep it in place? You see no issue with it being there? You just don't see it as the main game? Is that what you're saying?
Look, it's not the main game. Certainly, it's a if they want to do it and it makes people feel good and it obviously contributes towards environmental causes, then that's a good thing. But I really don't see how they're going to be able to roll it out before the election anyway. It's an announcement that was made by a minister, I think, who's doing a little bit of virtue signalling here. There are other ways that people can already make donations. There are other ways that people contribute. What I would really like to see, if we want to try and make sure that we're offsetting carbon, let's sort of move along with those projects that seem to be sitting. I mean, electric vehicle charging stations, for example, there's no public ones that have rolled out in the way that they were meant to by this stage. There isn't the uptake of EVs. More needs to be done in that way. But yeah, it's not certainly a policy thing that had come across my desk until this morning when I heard the minister announcing it. I don't really see this happening. And as you said, people make their choices.
All right. Well, just an interesting one to finish on. We're nearly out of time, but we've seen elections across Australia where the coalition's been seen as laggards on climate change and Labor more front runners. Is it different in New South Wales? It a more progressive government in terms of climate, and it's not going to be a big issue of differentiation at the March election?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Tom, and I think what people are saying, and it's certainly not into the mud-throwing politics, but, this minister in particular has put it on the agenda. It's certainly not something that people would have expected. What I think has been one of the cases, though, and I said this about Minister Keane, is that there's lots of big announcements, but things haven't rolled out. So the renewable energy zones, for example, the big one, in the central west, the big one at Rara still is missing. Like, we still don't have shovel-ready projects. Announcements about EVs, we still haven't had the uptake announcements about charging infrastructure. I think what's really important is that there is a recognition that we need to act on climate, but what we need to be is very pragmatic and look at how we bring everybody along and ensure that we don't polarise people one against the other. Certainly they've got their policies, we've got ours, but I think it's really important that we're talking about what we could do to try and improve, the health of this planet.
Jihad, thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks, mate.